Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Wholehearted Journey. My name is Meredith Hutson, and it's my birthday. It's my birthday. I'm 31. I definitely woke up feeling 31 for sure. What do I actually mean by that? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Young and hot. But I am truly convinced that you're not old until you're definitely in your 90s for sure. For sure, 100%. If you are 90 years old listening to a podcast, that's a mad flex. And you are definitely young at heart, and that is all that matters, okay? But today we have a massive topic. We're going to be talking about binge eating, and this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because I struggled with binge eating for majority of my life. I didn't really feel like I struggled with it severely until I graduated high school. It's something I am super passionate about talking about because it's what I coach the most in, I think. But when you're actively going through, binge eating and you're struggling with binge eating, you can feel very alone in it. It's not what people talk about. Like, people don't just hang out and be like, hey girl, last night, did you smash 2 whole family-sized bags of hot Cheetos? Because I did last night. It's just not something that's brought up in conversation. So when you're actively going through it, it can feel very isolating and, hard. Most of the time is not just, a mental thing or something that is all kind of, our own doing. There's a lot more to this. There's a bigger reason why we struggle with food noise and why we might be going through this right now, right? Okay, hang with me. Now, the very first webinar I ever did was last year. And in my webinar, I talked about the different kinds of binge eating disorders because it's not as a whole. I've worked with so many people who struggle with binge eating for so many different reasons. And so I really kind of want to list this out. You might see yourself in all of them. Maybe you see yourself in just a few, but it's really figuring out, okay, where do I fall? Where do I see myself? And kind of starting there because that's an important step. So let me pull this up. So there's the emotional binge eater, the mindless binge eater, the habitual binge eater, the restrictive binge eater, the secretive binge eater, the triggered binge eater, the numbing binge eater. Now I want to talk about probably the most common one, and that's going to be the emotional binge eater. This is someone who eats to cope with feelings like sadness, loneliness, stress, anger, anxiety, or boredom. Food becomes a form of comfort or escape from an emotional discomfort. And this is 100% me, but I think that a lot of times we think emotional binge eaters only when it's bad feelings, but sometimes it can also be the good feelings too. In my personal experience, anytime that I had a hyphen emotion, meaning that if I was really excited, if I was super happy, if I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is the best day ever, I would also fall into binge eating versus those days when I was really sad and I was struggling with depression and I had a lot of anxiety and I was stressed out of my mind, I was overwhelmed, I would also fall into binge eating. I want you to think about that truly. I mean, how many times do we have a hyphened emotion? Every single day. And yeah, that was where I was at without really knowing it until I started my weight loss journey. I think I just identified it very much more as ooh, homegirl, you like to eat. And once a foodie, always a foodie. I'm still very much a massive foodie at heart. That never really goes away. But it all comes down to the control that you have when it comes to food and the way that you view food. Is there an emotional connection that's I have to have food to comfort me, to make me feel better, to turn this day around? Is food something that you're thinking about and mapping out in your head of, okay, today, I'm going to go through the donut drive-through and I'm going to get this and this and this, and then I'm going to go to work. And then when I'm at work, I'll probably have a lunch hour and I'm going to go to Sonic. And then maybe if I have enough time, I'll also go to McDonald's so that way I can get my favorite, McFlurry or whatever it's called. And, and that was me. I dictated my whole day around food. And then when I came home, I just devoured until I went to bed. And my biggest thing that I used to binge eat the most on was hot Cheetos. And that is probably the worst thing on earth to binge eat because it tore me up. Basically, doctors were very concerned for me. So they were like, hey, we need you to get a colonoscopy. And I was like, wait, what? I mean, respectfully, what does that mean? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna shove a little chinkon. You shove a little chinkon, your little black-eyed pea. And I'll never forget this. This was my very first surgery, if you will. And I was already so nervous. I'm like, what the heck? This is so scary. I'm in my little hospital gown. The nurses roll me into the room and I'm laying there. I'm freaking out. There's a million people around me. I swear there's this bright light and I'm just on this table and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm getting this done. I feel like they're going to see my black-eyed pea, bro. They're going to see my black-eyed pea, bro. And I'm panicking. I'm like, dude. Out of all things, why my black-eyed pea, bro? I don't want you to see that. Tell me why. The doctor walked in, and I thought it was someone's child. I was like, yo, whose child is this? Why are they in here? I'm exposed. What's going on? It was the doctor, bro. All of a sudden, everyone in the room started clapping. Y'all, for real, started clapping. And I'm like, wait, why are we clapping? Wait, I look, and I start connecting the dots. I'm like, oh, wait. This is homeboy's first colonoscopy, bro. It is his first. And before I go into pure panic, before I can really digest the situation, the anesthesiast put on the mask and was count to 3. And I'm like, no. And then I'm out. TMI, but I had internal hemorrhoids. Hey, y'all want honesty or not? But anyways, let's talk about binge eating while we're here, obviously. I have some tips, but I also want to, and after I share these tips, I really want to go into explaining what it looks like as you're actively on the path of overcoming binge eating for good. This isn't just from my experience. This is from hundreds, if not thousands of women that I've coached who have also overcome binge eating. So this is collectively a lot of data, a lot of things that have really worked for so many people. So I want you to stay tuned, stay in this episode with me if you struggle with this, because there are going to be some tidbits that maybe will drastically help you on your journey with overcoming this, okay? Now, the very first tip I have is never grocery shopping hungry. I know that sounds so stupid, but put yourself, just reflect real quick. Just reflect. How many times have you went to the grocery store and you grabbed, triggering-ish food items or snacks that you know you've never been able to really stay strong on, but you bought anyways because you're severely hungry and they looked really good, and you told yourself, you know what, I'm just gonna have this as a snacky snack. I'm not gonna go crazy. I'll only have this every now and then boom, that night you find yourself basically devouring every single one of those snacks until they're gone. That was definitely me, girl. Definitely me. And I know so many people can relate to that. You don't even have to say it. I know so many people can relate to that. So never going to a grocery store hungry was a massive one for me. So make sure you always eat. Plan it out. Plan out the days that you're going to go to the grocery store. Don't wait till after work and you haven't ate in 6 hours and you're exhausted. You're just not going to make good choices. So I always went on the weekends, Sundays, and I think Wednesdays were always my calm girl days during the week, and just kind of scheduling it in that way. Now, another big one, and this one kind of goes hand in hand with just addiction in general, is lifesavers and gum. Think about it. This is where I kind of got creative in the ways that I navigated trying to help myself when I was on my journey. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, people who smoke cigarettes or vape or whatever, when they quit, they're always chewing gum. They're always chewing gum because of that hand to mouth situation, or their mouth is just their mouth is just going, so it's helping them kind of take their mind off of it. That is something that really helped me. For real. At night was usually when I would binge eat the most. That was probably where it got really, really severe. And it wasn't always at night, but that was my prime time. And so every time I ate dinner, I would always just put a lifesaver in my mouth and suck on it. And then I would probably have it a couple times every time I had the urge to keep snacking and the urge to get up and go devour my pantry, just something. I would put a lifesaver in and I would suck. And sometimes I would go through 6 lifesavers and really go hard on it. But the sugar-free lifesavers are always going to be helpful. Sugar-free gum is going to be helpful. I would chew gum during the day, lifesavers at night. And eventually I just stopped, which is so crazy. But even still today, if I get in a place where I'm falling really bad into old habits, where I'm not getting enough sleep, and maybe my meal schedule is all over the place, it creates this imbalance in the body, which I'm going to talk about of what I mean by imbalance in my body, to where your overall cravings and your appetite drastically increase and go a little wild. And this is, of course, setting yourself up for falling into overeating, just eating kind of the worst of the worst. It's just like your mindset weakens because of this imbalance, because you can only fight yourself for so long in your head. And so I did this forever, and not really now, not anymore now, but for the first year and a half after even just hitting my goal, I would still kind of pop in a lifesaver every now and then when it felt like the cravings were strong, and so forth. But this is a massive one that has helped a ton of my girlies. Now, a massive one is avoiding easy processed snacked foods in the house. Easily processed, you can just heat up, you can just grab, open up the bag. This could be chips, this can be cookies, this can be cereal. Anything that you notice yourself leaning towards, this is a massive one. Avoiding having these in the house can be really hard, especially for mothers, just because I hear this commonly well, my kids have these snacks and my husband has these snacks. And I will say, when it came to this discussion with me and my husband, I was like, okay, you either need to lock them up, you need to keep them in your car, just try maybe not to buy them. Just I know that you're not on this weight loss journey, but please try to, hang with me until I can really get to a place where I can, kind of control myself. And so luckily my husband did just stop altogether with bringing on snacks into the house. But when it comes to a lot of kids snacks, treats, just a lot of those easy prepackaged things, maybe we can make adjustments there. Maybe we can make healthier little snack options like carrots and hummus, maybe apple slices and peanut butter. There's so many different healthy snack options that, we can really give our kids. And the beauty in this is that we are not just protecting them for the now, but we're protecting them for the future. And of course, there's always going to be an adjustment, because kids are going to crave, just like us, what we eat. You crave what you eat. And so when you're used to eating the goldfish and the chips and the, cookies and all these things, that's just what our mind is going to want until we get adjusted to the new norm of what we snack on. Carrots and hummus is probably not going to be very appetizing to a kid at first, and they might not like you very much, but it's such a healthy transition, not only for you and your journey, but it's overall a very healthy transition for the overall fam bam. And that comes with time. It doesn't need to be perfect. This isn't saying kids need to go on the Whole30 or overall completely whole food. But at the end of the day, it completely comes down to you. I just know for me, and a lot of people can relate to this, is that if it was in the house and I was in my prime time of healing and overcoming my binge eating, I just simply couldn't hold strong. And, implementing a lot of these things did help, but the biggest thing was just not having it in my house. Now, another big one is healthier sweet treats. This was a massive one for me because I had something sweet almost every night of my 120-pound weight loss journey, and I was not going to cut out my sweets. And every time that I did cut out sweets, I felt like it was too quick, too fast. And so I fell into this restrictive mindset. And again, remember one of those things that create, binge eating, restrictive binge eating. So I then kind of tap into that, as soon as I felt kind of restricted, I would fall even deeper into the hole of binge eating. So I was just like, okay, let me make some healthier tweaks. If you're an ice cream girly, I really, really loved the Outshine popsicles. The Carb Smart fudge bars are so good. Both of these things are very low in calories, between 30 to 60 calories. They also have hardly any sugar in it. I think 1, maybe 2 grams of sugar in a fudge pop or an Outshine popsicle. And these were healthier sweet treats, but you can also do rice cake with PB2 powder, or even sometimes Nutella. Nutella does have a lot more sugar in it. So I always tell my girlies, if you're diabetic, PCOS, insulin resistant, or you're battling your blood sugar right now, it is probably something I would avoid. And it's not one of those things I want you to label as bad, but it is one of those things that like, it can contain a lot of sugar in it, and we can kind of overindulge in it, and that kind of fight back towards us. Because kind of just like what I talked about in our last episode, discussing how our blood sugar plays a big role even in our cravings and our energy levels and everything else in between, is that we still want to be mindful of our blood sugar and trying not to go out of whack with that, because then it makes our cravings stronger, our sweet tooth stronger, a lot of things. And it's just like, it makes this process of what we're trying to do here more difficult. So healthier sweet treats that aren't crazy high in sugar is a great place to start, and will help you headed into the right direction. Now, a massive one was going to bed earlier. And I want y'all to really dive deep into this. Like, really think about this for yourselves. When is it that you notice yourself binge eating the most? Is it in the morning? Is it during the day? Is it at night? Like, I know that you might have those moments, just kind of like how I did, but like, where was your prime time? And a lot of times, most of the time, 80%, probably 90% of the time, is at night. And so I started connecting the dots and looking at patterns of this. And I realized that if I ate dinner at 7 o'clock, but I didn't go to bed till like 12 or 1 o'clock, there were so many hours in between, when I ate dinner versus when I went to bed. And so that left me with being at war in my head for so long until I cracked. And that was kind of naturally what happened. I could stay strong for about 2, maybe 3 hours. But after that 3-hour mark, I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I can't keep hearing this noise in my head screaming at me to keep eating, to go do this and this, and put myself in that position where I fall into it. And so if I just went to bed, and I'm telling y'all, even if I wasn't tired, I would still force myself to at least get in bed, because if I'm in bed, I'm laying my head on the pillow, the urge isn't as strong versus if I'm sitting on the couch watching TV. You feel me. So going to bed earlier was a massive one for me. And this also will help you so much. Kind of, again, what we talked about in our last episode with our energy levels, being on a much more like structured routine. It will help us with our motivation and so forth. This will be great, getting enough sleep, making sure that we get enough sleep. And then again, our hormones will thank us. And in return, our sweet cravings will be less than. So everything is a ripple effect. And everything that we do is kind of a ripple effect. And you will start to catch that the more that you listen to these podcasts from me about how everything goes hand in hand. And that's why the small things really become the big things, because of the ripple effect that they create. Now, eating a later dinner, this is one of those things that, you can probably hear on social media all the time, like, don't eat dinner don't eat, dinner way too close to bedtime. And, you've probably even heard me talk about like trying not to eat 3 hours before going to bed and all these things. But when you're struggling with binge eating, you need to scratch all of that, not worry about that. Don't consume yourself with that. Focus on the biggest problem that we need to overcome right here, right now, and that is the binge eating. Okay. And so what will help us sometimes with binge eating is having a later dinner, because again, that same rule applies to where we're not falling into one, battling food noise, but now on top of that, actual hunger, because we had dinner way too early. And now we're kind of sitting with our thoughts and feelings and emotions, and now hunger on top of that, that's full sending us. So I usually would eat dinner around 9 o'clock at night, not gonna lie. And then I would be in bed around 10:30, 11. Again, not the most ideal thing. We want to have a little bit of space, ideally around 3 hours before going to bed, but it helped me with overcoming my binge eating. And as soon as I overcame that, then I was able to start putting that into play. And that's how that works. You got to build up off of one another and prioritize the phase and the stage that you're in. You can't always consume all of the pieces of advice that you hear on social media and so forth, or just like random discussions with people, because if you do that, you're going to feel like everything is a no. Everything you're a no. You're going to implement one thing and then feel like as soon as you implement it, you're being told it's a bad thing to do and you shouldn't do it. You just gotta block out the noise. If you do that, you're gonna go insane and it's gonna make your journey 20 million times more difficult. Okay. Now, what does it look like to make progress where you can actively feel that you're overcoming binge eating? What does that look like? Because I think a lot of people think it's just never falling into it. Like, as soon as you implement all these things and you're like getting into trying a routine and you have a really good streak, that you're never going to have another episode. And if you do, then you're a failure and you really haven't overcome it and you're going to spiral all over again. And that's not what progress looks like. What progress looked like for me was, before I started my journey, it was every single day, almost every single day, I was binge eating. And then when I started my journey, like that first week, I would probably have to say a strong 70% of that week I was falling into binge eating. And then like the first month, it was like very heavy. But as time went on, like by the time I got to like my 6-month mark, you know, I didn't lose any weight by this point. Like I hadn't lost nothing, yo. Like it was a rough 6 months, but it didn't feel like a rough 6 months because I was like, I'm doing way more than I ever done in years, if ever. And I'm still here. And that's like, I've never been more consistent. The fact that I saw past week 1 and got past day 40, because those were usually my biggest drop-offs. If by the 7th day I was already giving up on a journey, or by the day 40 I was already done and gave up on my weight loss journey. But the fact that I was now sitting at the 6-month mark, even though I didn't lose any weight, I was like, yo, so much has changed within me and my mind and the way that I am approaching this journey. And I just knew wholeheartedly I was going to make it happen. There's no doubt, even though everything around me was screaming, yeah, you're not changing, but really low key on the high key, I was. But by that 6-month mark, it went from every day to now just, I would say probably a few times a month. And then after my 1 year, it went from a few times a month to now maybe once every couple of months. And then by the time I hit my year 2, it was like never happening, but just randomly. Then I go into maintenance, of course. I lost 120 pounds. Everything's good. And then my first year in maintenance, I had a few moments that I probably would not know. I wouldn't consider as binge eating, but definitely a lack of control where I was like overindulging and overeating. But it wasn't emotional. It was just a sense of I got really hungry in these moments and I kind of just like full-fledged, full sent it to the severe measure. So you can call that whatever you want, but it wasn't emotional and it wasn't like this sense of I'm reaching for food for comfort to make myself feel better. It was simply like, yo, this food be hitting different. And so I view that personally differently. And so I had a few moments within that, first year of maintenance. And then after that, boom, never again, never again. I'm a foodie. I'm a big foodie. So sometimes I can smash me a good old bag of popcorn. I can smash me this, but it is not binge eating. And it's not, and I'm not in denial. I know that sounds like she's in denial. She's in denial. No, but for real, it is not. But I also want to bring my brother into this topic too. My older brother, just like I said, we're kind of like hand in hand. We struggled with the exact same things for a very long time through the same phases. And his journey was very similar to mine. When he started, his binge eating was actually probably more severe than mine. And then when he went about his weight loss journey, his was kind of a little bit more restrictive. Homeboy definitely underate unintentionally, because most men just don't like counting calories or macros at all. It's just how they roll, and they usually can see results pretty easy. Their bodies aren't as sensitive as us women, and that's just the harsh reality of it. And they have more muscle in their bodies, so they have quicker metabolisms. And I'm not trying to discredit my brother. My brother was definitely insulin resistant. He struggled a very severe binge eating disorder, and he lost 135 pounds. And his progress was basically the same pace as mine. It lingered a little bit into his maintenance, but now he's at a place where that just never happens anymore. And so a lot of times when I've worked with women, I've been able to help them see progress quicker, but that doesn't mean everyone's like that. Everyone has their own course, and everyone has their own things that trigger them, and they have their own pace, and it's not a race. I don't know how many times I have to explain this. It's not a race. I know that we want to get to this place like as fast as we possibly can, but you have to really like take yourself back to reality and ask yourself, do I want to try to skip this part and never truly overcome this or heal from this? Or do I then battle with this every year for the rest of my life and never ever get to a place where I don't do it? Or am I willing to put in the work, the mental, physical, emotional work, and give myself this grace, give myself this time, not put the pressure on me, not diminish, the progress I'm making, even if it's small, even if the scale's not changing because I'm struggling with my consistency. Like, are you willing to just put in the work now so then you can finally overcome it, finally heal, and actually live a life free from this struggle? You have to look at your weight loss journey in that way, especially if you're someone that struggles with binge eating, because nutrition is already the hardest part. But when you're talking about binge eating on top of that, or I even want to say on the flip side of things, if someone that struggles with chronic, under eating too, I mean, both of those are equally very difficult to overcome. Not even close to being impossible though. Not even close to being impossible. What makes it impossible is if someone is in a mindset where they keep giving up on themselves and they keep saying it's not possible to do it, or you just won't give yourself the time to really go through all the steps that it takes and all the phases that it takes. Like, we'll never overcome it. We'll never get past it. You have to commit to yourself and you have to say, I'm worth fighting for. This is worth investing time in. And my future is going to be brighter because of what I'm doing in the now. And so it is a personal thing that we cannot escape. It is something that we have to do and we all have to face someday when we struggle with it. And that is just the reality. That's just the reality of it. And so anyways, I hope that this was a very helpful, maybe a little bit all over the place podcast, kind of talking about binge eating. But the biggest thing here is that y'all just take away from this, that this is something that can sometimes take some time. But these tips are things that can drastically help you, that can really, really just make you feel a massive shift in this. And I just encourage y'all to really reflect, every single month and as time goes on about the progress that you're truly making. One moment or one bad couple of days doesn't make you a failure. You know what it means? It means that you're actively walking on the path to truly overcome it. And you got to fail a million times. You got to go through the trial and errors of it all before you get to this place where you're done battling it. It's not a switch on, switch off type of thing. It's not something that you just snap your fingers and you just force yourself to be. It is something that will take time. And that's okay. Time is something that I know makes you cringe, but the more that you go on your journey, you actually appreciate the fact that you get time to do this. I hope that makes sense. Like, not going to hitting your 6-month mark and being like, it's been 6 months. This is all I have to show. But going to your 6 months and being like, I can't wait to see what the next 6 months will bring me because I did make progress in this area. And I know that I'll be at a completely different place, 6 months from now. Looking at time is honestly like a blessing versus it being something that is a curse. Wow. That was powerful, actually. I love that. But anyways, I am now going to get my day started. I don't have any plans for my birthday, and that is how I wanted it. I'm so for real. I was like, kind of telling myself, I'm like, hopefully my husband doesn't plan anything for my birthday or do anything sneaky, because like literally I have very intentional plans to do absolutely nothing today. No, well, not today, tonight. I got to work all day today. I got some meetings I got to pop into actually right now, but you feel me. I also just want to say thank you guys so much for being here. I love y'all. Have an amazing day, and I'll see y'all on my next episode on Thursday. XOXO, Gossip Girl.